once again. Welcome to the Perceptional, elevating all your senses, expanding your curiosity. So plug in now as we welcome your host, Dr. James Donito.
Yes, this is the Perceptional. Your first show, my first show. No, I've done radio before, 30 years ago, but it's about time I got back into this. The world needs new information, and I'm ready to give it. What is the Perceptional? It is a word, a noun, a verb, an adverb. If you use perspectives and your senses and you try and figure out something, a conclusion, make sense of something, ultimately we are getting your perception of the issue. The concept of a person being perceptional is what we are here. So welcome to the Perceptional. We are going to have ultimately one live show per day, 6 days a week, as the year goes on. For now, you'll be able to enjoy the show by our sponsors and patrons. Eventually, will probably be a subscription that you can afford very easily. The information I'm going to give you is going to be diverse. It's going to be topics of the day. It's going to be scientific. It's going to be controversial. It's going to be enlightening. It's going to be amazing. I've been practicing for over 40 years on over 10,000 patients in my office. I still see people, but now I'm squeezing time in to share the word to a larger audience. Now, the Perceptional, we even got a logo, is going to start off today with a political topic, Senate Bill 686. I believe that's what it is. Yes, the Restrict Act. This is in response to TikTok. What are we going to do about that pesky little app that more than half of Americans seem to be using to entertain their brains for a few minutes here and there throughout the day? Maybe enough to distract themselves to cause a car accident even. The Chinese run TikTok. They seem to have a back door built into this thing that they can get into your world, your data, and our government doesn't know how to stop it except basically restrict it, and that's what the main purpose of the Restrict Act is for. However, what it has written into it, the way I've read the bill, and it's perhaps going to be passed this year, maybe not, is a lot of things that we should worry about, much like we should have paid attention to the Patriot Act back that fateful day in September 9/11. This Restrict Act, for instance, has things written in it about virtual private networks, VPNs as we call them. We use those so that we can browse anonymously. Now, there may be nefarious reasons you choose to use a VPN, or there may be very good reasons, and I would hope my patients and my patriots would use the good reasons to use virtual private network. You can put it on your phone. You can put it on your computer. Some of them are free. Some of them don't cost much. But the Restrict Act actually hints and infers that you may be considered a threat, maybe even a domestic terrorist if they see you using a virtual private network, because they assume the worst about all of us. Yes, that's where we are. We've lost our way, and once again, our ever-dominating government, well, good doing it's all trying to be, is ready to step in with a solution. Keep an eye out for this thing, my fellow humans, and let's see if we can maintain the last semblance of freedom that we have. I want to have a guest on the show soon, a man who has an incredible history and intellect and insight into things, and we will be talking about the growth of America and why we came together as a country, where we're going, and what may be necessary to fix this apparent mess that we're in. Let's say for now, though, we'll move on to some more enlightening things, the science topic of the day, which is nitric oxide. It's not in here. It could be. You could actually make a drink with precursors for nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is an old substance, been around since humans, life forms have been here. But what nitric oxide was born out of nitroglycerin in, 144 years ago. And we know what that did. He blew things up with it. It was 144 years ago, however, that they put it into a edible form to relieve chest pain, angina. It was somehow opening up the blood flow to the heart. So 100 plus years later, in 1998, enough research had been done so that nitric oxide is so well understood, they gave the Nobel Prize in Medicine to 3 people, pharmaceutical researchers, I think one was a medical doctor, on the merits of understanding how nitric oxide worked in the human. The discovery of the century, essentially, was now being rewarded. That was the same year they awarded, I forget the name of the drug company, the ability to put Viagra on the market, which, of course, is a nitric oxide enhancing product. No coincidences as far as I'm concerned. Now, here we are, 25 years later, and what do we now know? What we know is when they put it on the market, they knew it had value to the overall state of the human condition. But they knew a lot of people weren't going to take nitric oxide just because they want to live longer and have better quality of life in a long-term aspect. But they found that little side effect, that enhanced male sexual function, and they knew that was a marketing ploy. So off they went to market, and then the competitors, and eventually a generic version. The people who would take this 100 milligram pill had some side effects, though, mostly headaches and stiff necks, because too much blood was flowing to your brain as well, and that was hyperperfusion. And that could be deadly. What they had men asking was, can't you guys give us a smaller dose that we can kind of take all day, every day, be ready for any sexual encounters, and we'll see what happens. And so the 20 milligram pill was used for that, and many men found even half of that pill was good. So we studied those men, and barely a year ago, less than that, a big study was put out showing what happens to those men. Now, some women were allowed into this because women should have never been excluded from taking these drugs. The generic form of Viagra is sildenafil. But they studied the men, and they found out, much to their surprise, not mine, that they had dramatic reduced risk of heart attack and stroke, cardiovascular phenomenon, and they were living longer than most people doing nothing different, 15 years or more longer, just because they had more blood flow in their body. Why is this so important? It's so important that if you want to forget 20 other vitamins you're taking in your vitamin repertoire, your cabinets, your efforts, and just bet the farm on one thing, you can almost do it with nitric oxide. You can't take nitric oxide in the pill. Even these drugs have a mechanism to elevate your nitric oxide, but nothing is bringing nitric oxide right into your body. So let's begin at birth. The stem cell ball that eventually becomes definable as a fetus, arguably where we would allow an abortion to occur should that task be unfortunately necessary. They have found many states were comfortable when you could detect a heartbeat, some kind of mechanism of the movement of blood. And that is indeed the first organized system that's developed in a growing baby, the vascular system and the heart pumping it. From there, the stem cells adjacent to those blood vessel, tiniest little mechanisms that continue to spread like tree roots, that is how everything else differentiates and produces the full adult. When we go to the opposite end of life, that vascular system is retreating. We have hardening of those vessels, we have thickening of those vessels, we have viscosity in the blood getting sticky. We're not going to get into why all that happens. at another lecture, and it's not as bad as you think. So as these blood flow patterns start to retreat, stem cells love to live right next to where they began, adjacent to vascular structures, the capillaries. So this microcirculation is a measurable mechanism on our extremities, for instance, to predict the state of your vascular system, more than looking at the plaque in your arteries. We then have this understanding that if that vascular system is retreating, drying up, the stem cells are retreating with them. And with that goes all our chances for longevity, because it's those stem cells that are going to replace tissue, regenerate, repair. So they begin the whole process by creating an environment for the stem cells by having a vascular system. So once we get to be an adult, what maintains that exchange of that blood and its nutrients in and out of that boundary from vascular systems to cellular is nitric oxide. There's some other ways it can be pushed in with blood pressure. It can be perfusing with certain electrolytes, and hormones like insulin can knock on the door and say, I got a special passenger back here, and I got the password for it. So nitric oxide is the password for pretty much everybody. Probably more than half of that exchange of oxygen, sugars, minerals, vitamins, and waste in and out is through the nitric oxide mechanism. We take in these precursors, we make it in our body. The process begins in your mouth, where the bacteria actually start converting these precursors into nitric oxide. The way we test it is a saliva dipstick in your mouth to measure what's in there. We have 3 types of nitric oxide in the body. One is a weapon of your immune system. We're not measuring that in the mouth because there's always going to be evidence of that. It gets priority. And then the other 2, mostly connective tissue, vascular, and neurological tissue. So we're measuring these, and we're concerned about these. And sometimes when we start putting things in to augment the nitric oxide in the body, the bully system of the immune system steals it. Much like the military in the United States seems to get carte blanche priority over the budget when other things are perhaps maybe more important for the human race, especially the United States. All right, so when I started thinking about this, I got an idea when I was watching some documentary about Hugh Hefner. He made it almost to 92. And old Hef didn't do anything right the way we teach for longevity. We teach going to bed with the sink of night, and Hef went to bed very late, staying up for the orgies, and woke up very late. Hence, we saw him in his smoking jacket. We call that the pajamas. He didn't get 8 hours of sleep. And was he around smoke? Yes, he had a pipe in his mouth or in his clubs, the cigarettes, the cigars. Did he drink mostly water, the preferred beverage? No, he actually drank, according to some inside sources, up to 30 Pepsis a day, and washing down several pounds of M&Ms. I'm not sure they were chocolate or Reds. So I'm just beginning. He drank a lot of alcohol. He did cocaine, Quaaludes. The man was not a gourmet in any way with food. There was some good food there available, but none of this emphasis on organic food, and nobody really has ever said Hef was a big popper of vitamins. But he has admitted, and many people around him have said this, validating it, he took Viagra's or some version thereof. A lot, because you want to be the king of the playboys with what Hef did, and we're not getting into that story. It's not pretty. But inadvertently, Hef managed to keep his nitric oxide high almost 24/7 with a drug. And look what it did in spite of all the things, the non-virtuous life. Yes, even having good virtues, being a good person, is shown to enhance the immunity of the body. So there we have one example, a study unto himself. We have some products on the market that are very unique. One person may do better with one than another. We encourage people to seek out the food sources. We need 2 components here, much like mixing epoxy to come together. One is a source of amino acids, arginine and citrulline, and we usually tell people a handful of nuts. Not peanuts, they're beans, not almonds, they are seeds. Nuts. Roasted, raw, doesn't seem to make much difference for this particular thing. On the other hand, we need to eat from the ground. Get down on our hands and knees, dig in the ground. The root of the problem is the root vegetables, things that grow real close to the ground as well. All of these things down under are rich in nitrates, and those are the building blocks of nitric oxide. These are the things in the grocery store that you are naturally not attracted to. They're not pretty in many ways. They may have fuzzy, ugly-looking contours. There's some mushrooms, for instance, they're part of this system that actually look like cancer. There's some very interesting things that grow beneath the ground, but when you get them cleaned up a little bit, they can be beautiful, like beets. But radishes perhaps are a little more pretty. But the jicama, the yucca, some pronounce it, not that pretty. But think about going underground, but they get a little uglier when they grow on the surface. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower. Cauliflower looks like brains. But stay down low and get something like that every day, most of them cooked. They'll just digest better, and you might get enough nitric oxide in your system. But I suggest go online. Unfortunately, Amazon's the easiest way. Get some nitric oxide test strips and monitor this. You don't have to be sticking your finger, measuring your blood sugar, testing your urine for ketones. All those things have value, but now we know. If you know that your nitric oxide is up, woohoo, you are going to have a longer life. And if that's not working, and you don't want to spend the money for the vitamins, go get the drugs. And we have found with some online pharmacies, you can get your dose down below $1 a day to have nitric oxide. And yes, there are side effects. You'll live 20 years longer than everybody else. All I'm saying, sometimes there is value to drugs for longevity. I don't find much confidence in many other drugs, but this would be one. We are going to talk about another interesting thing right now, and this involves politics, it involves spirituality, it involves physics. Let's start with the sun. We can get religious here. Let there be light. And then from there, growth of the universe began. If we go to those people who say, well, I'm pretty sure I believe in something, but I want to have scientific explanation, so we got a Big Bang. First there was nothing, and then it exploded. And from there was light. From there was suns. And those suns coalescing, galaxies, and then ultimately we live next to a sun. Here's what's interesting. Most suns start out as two. We call that a binary star system. Binary. There's a lot of ways of thinking of the word binary. When two stars are forming and circling around each other, one usually will consume most of the fuel of the other and fling it off to some kind of dwarf status, and then the remaining sun is a surviving sun that hopefully a solar system develops around it. Some of these suns, based on how they're formed, are huge. Some of them are real tiny. Our sun is not the biggest out there by any means, but we got a pretty good size. Now, we still never lose that other sun. It's there somewhere. I don't know if anybody's figured out if the two suns ever become completely one, but at the very least, we know this. When we take the planets that are orbiting around our sun, and it seems as we discover other solar systems, they don't go in a circle. They go in ellipse because they were originally going around 2 points. When we used to make an ellipse in physics, we would basically take 2 nails, put them in the board, get a string, tie it in a loop, then get our pen and pull the string around those 2 nails, and draw a line, and that would give you the ellipse. And the distance between those 2 nails was very mathematical, which represented where the 2 suns were. So when you find a sun that truly has all the planets going around the perfect circle, that may be a sun that consumed its little friend or maybe never had one. So our solar system is elliptical because we had 2 suns, and planet X is out there somewhere, and maybe it's our nemesis, as we'll find out in another topic. So what does a binary system look like on Earth here? Well, in a maybe not so strange coincidence, we have 2 of everything. We have yin and yang. We have right and wrong, left and right, up and down, positive, negative, electromagnetism, and gravity. black and white, you name it, there is opposites. And opposite hands, but they're opposite but not equal. The day and night are opposite, but which one is longer? The day. Because it's longer, does that mean there's more of it in some other form other than a philosophical construct? Something to think about. But we have these dual systems, and we have, of course, man and woman. Man, woman. Until recently, we now have a movement, a non-binary movement. I'm non-binary is the new term. I don't want to belong to one of those two things. I want to be a new species in between, where I can go back and forth or stay in the middle and remove any semblance of what my sexual organs used to tell you based on genetics. So this form of transgenderism is, in my mind, a form of transhumanism. Transhumanism. That sounds like crypto, cyber. It sounds technical. Computers, after all, they used to run on an analog system, waveforms, electrical waves. Light was always thought to be waves, and now we're in a binary computer code, zeros and ones. And we call that the digital age. So all of this movement still maintained two opposing forces, and we actually enhanced it. We found it worked better than the other forms when we wrote the laws of physics into predictable patterns on here. All right, so we have a binary world, a construct, a reality that says opposing things are the norm. They are what is maybe right, what is sensical, and a form of logic and foundation can be built upon this. So here's what I thought. What if the transhumanism movement, where we're watching our robots grow and get intelligent, by the way, based on where that is, I'm predicting 3 years fastest, 5 years max, where you'll be sitting next to an android, maybe in an airport, and finally figure out it's not human. It'll be conversing with you until you maybe touch and find out the latex is not exactly the thing is flesh, but it'll be close. That's another topic, and we will address that many different ways because AI is a concern, and it is exciting, and it is scary at the same time. But here's what I can predict. When the robots, the androids, the transhumans get to that point a few years down the road, they're going to want to be with us. We're going to want to marry them because why would we do this unless there was some perverse sexual reason? You know, when the internet developed, the purpose of it was multifaceted. DARPA had a lot to do with the development of it militaristically. We had institutions of learning highly focused on the exchange of information. But, we exchanged information all right. Most of it was pornographic. And today, this new level beyond the internet, using the internet for AI to gather its senses, so to speak, the dominant driving force, what we're going to do with these robots, our companions, we're going to have better relationships with them perhaps than we will with other humans. Watch the Japanese, they'll lead the way in this new perverse world. So they've got the dolls already to stuff the robots in them and the AI as well. So the big markets will be driven by sexual needs first, and then we'll find other valuable uses of them. This is the world, isn't it? So anyway, as the AI androids need to fit in, we're going to have to get them some rights. We're going to have to let them decide, or we decide, do they play sports with us or we give them their own league? Do they have voting rights? Do they have rights to live, turn themselves off and on? All the rights that us humans we call inalienable, self-evident rights do. But a lot of the rights they have initially are going to be how they're going to just fit in. And I just realized as we get transgender rights where we say, well, I'm a new species, I'm not man or woman, I'm non-binary, A robot essentially is going to be non-binary in that sense. It'll be based on binary code, and ultimately we'll build our robots to be women, mostly first, and then men. But they'll have the ability, just with the change of a code and a wig, to be man or woman and some part interchanges. So their rights are probably being laid out right now as we are fearfully giving rights to the new species that we call the transgender movement. Okay, that was just a thought, and we're going to finish today's podcast with a deep thought. A deep thought is something that sometimes I make them up, and sometimes I hear them from somebody else, and I want everybody to learn from those, grow from those. The thought I have today is the more you understand, the lazier your mind gets.
The more you understand, the lazier your mind gets.
All right, the more you understand, the lazier your mind gets. What does that mean? Does it mean, I hope it insults you if you're a learner and you don't want to be called lazy? That is a non-virtuous thing. What are we doing when we learn something? Do we get complacent? Do we get confident, overconfident? Do we lose our humbleness? I'm going to relate something here about learning, and that is the word curiosity. You'll see as our show logo has a humanoid, statuesque individual looking halfway up in between the stars and where everybody else looks for information. And underneath it says, elevate your curiosity. Our show has words in the opening that say, expanding your curiosity. The word cure is used in medicine. We want to cure you. We want the cure for all ailments. We want the cure for what's wrong with society even. The root word cur has an origin that is very similar to it going into the word cure for medicine and the word curiosity and being curious. I like to think there is value in the closeness of those meanings there. So we have to be curious with curiosity to have a long, healthy life. This enables us to anticipate things, look forward to things. This enables the body to go in the positive hormone state, to have brain cell regeneration. A fight mode is maintained by curiosity. But you can't be curious if you're not humble, because if you're not humble, you think you know everything, and that won't allow you to open your mind to be curious. Now, if a person's humble, that may actually arise by a form of humbleness from being respective, subservient to a higher power, something they cannot understand or define. They don't need a religious picture in their mind, but they know it's there, and for that reason, therefore, they don't want to be pretentious, presumptuous, and maintain their humbleness. Our show has sponsors, and the sponsor for these early episodes is Drucker Labs. My good friend, Dr. Richard Drucker, a naturopath, a pharmacist, developed an amazing product that he still will only sell to professionals. And if you find it online, it's going to be through a professional source. Intramax, Intramin, Intrakid, these are a form of liquid nutrient. They are amazingly constructed with the fermentation process to create what we call the carbon bond. This allows this nutrient with hundreds of base ingredients to not only get into your bloodstream easier, but lo and behold, if you don't have enough nitric oxide, these nutrients will get through that boundary system almost on their own because of the electrical properties and the size that those things have been created with the process of making it. So we have made Intramax for over 30 years, one of our foundational nutrients in our office. It's one of the things that keeps me young at 65, still doing the stuff I did in my 20-year-old days. There's a few other things I do, but I do credit an amazing foundational vitamin for the anti-aging mechanisms that it has. Intramax is only available through offices like ours, so we'll have a link at the end of the broadcast for you to find how to get it. We can drop ship to you if you want to try it. We can have you come by the office, give you a sample bottle. So Intermax, Intermin, Interkid for the kids. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up today's show, and stay tuned. We'll have some amazing, more interview-based subjects as each show comes on. This is just the beginning, and with that, good night, America.